Welcome to this episode of the Wildly Satisfied Way, and welcome to the Wildly Satisfied Media Platform. I am your host, Taylor Davis, and I don't want to live a life I have to recover from. So when I was in Bali of 2024, I went on that trip because my roommate and I decided that we need to be nourished. It was a situation where we had good lives. I had an amazing life. I had amazing clients. I loved my home. I loved the people I was around. And yet I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm not being nourished in the way that I want to. And so when, we booked that trip, I wasn't burned out. I know what burnout feels like. I have been there many times in my life, and it definitely was not from a burnout perspective. And so in this episode, and in this mini series of what I'm diving into, we're going to go over what I call the collapse and recovery cycle. And this is something that I have seen as a baseline pattern in our society, in our culture, that perpetuates burnout and survival strategies and the way that we loop inside of, trying to figure things out and, I'm going to burn it all down. It's going to be good for a couple of years, and then I'm going to have to begin and build again. It's because a lot of what we've been taught about business and life has not been from a sustainable perspective. It has been from survival perspective. It has been from, I'm going to niche myself down because niching is what makes money, when in reality, you just need to niche down your offer, not your entire business. Because when you build from a perspective of survival, of I just need to make enough money to live, or I want to be able to make enough money where I can just do whatever I want. That need and that survival perspective and I'm going to do this because this makes sense, versus I'm going to build sustainably in a way that makes sense to me, in my intuitive strategy, my body, my way of being, and solidify that foundation. When we have that perspective, we don't have to burn our business down every 3 years. Or 2 years, or try this thing and then burn it down and start again, and then collapse and recover over and over again. And so that's what this series is going to be about, this mini-series that I am recording as my first solo mini-series. Here we go. And like I said in the intro, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to hear sounds. I didn't get the shadows on the wall perfect if you're watching this. This is a set in my home, and you'll see it change, and I'll be increasing my skills, and here we go. Let's do it, because performance is a big part of why we collapse and recover. And it's a big part of our burnout, because we're trying to be a certain way that's just not our way. We're following strategies and systems and ways that just are not designed for us. They're designed for somebody else, and they worked well for them. That doesn't mean they're going to work well for us. So let's go back to I don't want to live a life I have to recover from. I went to Bali in 2024. And I didn't realize until I was there, but the word that came through was weary. I'm so weary. And what's wild is that I didn't even think that until I was about, I would say a week there, week or so in there. And it was beautiful. Bali is an amazing place. Such kind, beautiful people that by their essence themselves, they are just very nourishing, especially in Ubud. And that's the main city in Bali. And before I left, I got a massage from a bodyworker friend of mine, and she said, I pulled a card for you, and the word that came up was weary. And I just, I kind of pushed it off. It's all good. I didn't really think about it. It didn't really hit me until I was a week and a half in, and I was very lightly working with clients because I was going on a sabbatical afterwards, and I knew a big shift was coming, but some things were changing in my business. And so one of my clients was pausing in December, and I was helping her onboard a new OBM, because I do a lot of COO work, at least for an interim COO. And there was an email that came through, and I was not checking my emails so much. I was on an opposite time zone, and I was at breakfast with my friend, my roommate, and this email came through because we were onboarding a new OBM, and she said to someone else, hey, I don't really have a team right now, so this is going to take a little bit of time. And it was crazy, because in that moment, my body just kind of shut down for a second. I don't know why I looked at my email. I didn't randomly check my email. Like that wasn't a habit that I had. It came up, I looked at it, I was at breakfast. And while the person was not meaning anything bad by it, I know they weren't. They were literally just stating like she's in, transition and she has a new team member coming on. And I'm not full-time like in it with her or anything like that. I was just part-time transitioning. And regardless, my body just kind of shut down for a second because what came through was no matter what I do, it's never enough. And my roommate looked at me and goes, "What just happened? Because your body just froze." And I looked out over the jungle and I was really just kind of silent for a second. And I was hearing, the sound of the jungle. We were at this resort that we were staying at. And then I kind of just moved over to her and I could feel the tears in my eyes. And I was like, "I'm so tired." I'm tearing up now, even thinking about it. I was like, "I'm so tired. I'm so tired because nothing that I have done is enough." Whether it was this person or my business and I loved my business, I loved how I was doing things. But I was like, but there's just something that feels off. And like I said, I wasn't in burnout mode. I did not feel burned out. I knew I wanted to be nourished, which is why I went to Bali, but I didn't realize how undernourished I was. And so I let myself feel it. And she goes, "Well, what do you want to do right now?" And I was like, "I think I just need to let my body tune into this." And during Bali, a lot of things came up around, there was no noise in Bali. Like I didn't have my work going on really, except for a couple things. The noise of like just America and the grind culture that I live in. And even though I'm not a hustle and grind person, there is this energy of America. I mean, you can feel it definitely when you leave the country and come back, of grit and hustle and grind, which makes sense because that's what America was built on and colonized by. And so it makes sense that this energy is here. And when I was sitting there in Bali, there wasn't much noise. There's just this energy of peace and nourishment. Yes, movement and life, but it was peaceful. And so a lot of what I, would say in Bali is like, my body gets what she wants. What does she want today? So I'm sitting there with my friend and she says, "What do you want to do?" And I leaned into my body and I went, "I think I want to get up and move." So I spent that day following whatever my body wanted. Literally, I just surrendered to her. And I went to an exercise class at Yoga Barn, which is beautiful. If you ever get to go to Bali, it's amazing. Great community center, amazing classes, a beautiful property right in the middle of Ubud. And I went to this class. And by the way, there's not really air conditioning. So I'm in the middle of this in the morning, and it's this slow strength building class. And what comes through is slowness builds strength. I'm like, okay. So I tuned in through the entire day. I went to, I walked around Ubud. I had beautiful juices. I fed myself. I nourished myself. I wrote. I went to Mudra. I went to Zest, which are two of my favorite places in that city. Very nourishing. And I'll do a whole episode on those because wow, you'll see the article as well. And what dropped in later that day when I nourished myself is I don't want to live a life I have to recover from. And so much of my life was recovery based. Even when we think about culture, when we think about how, even like wellness culture, right? They're like, "Oh, well, yeah, you got to push yourself and then recovery, push yourself, recovery." And I was like, yes, and why are we always living in recovery mode? Like, why is that the baseline versus overflow? Because a lot of our culture is built on survival strategies. And a lot of our population, especially in the US, is in survival mode in some way or another, or hustle mode, or doing, or productivity. Like, there's so much in this that it just doesn't give room for, oh, we're going to operate from overflow. And yeah, we're going to go and like push our edge a little bit, but we're not going to push ourselves off the edge. We're not going to burn ourselves out. Yes, we need a little bit of a challenge, but so much of the world is built on go, 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 go. It's like having a car that you never turn off and you put gas back in, but you're only putting like $5 of gas back in versus filling the tank and then having overflow in the back, like in tanks. So that I don't want to live a life I have to recover from. When I said that out loud, it was a decision. And when you make a decision in your life, you cut off all other choices. That's what a decision is. It's not wishy-washy energy. It's not, oh, well, I'm going to, maybe I'm going to try this, or I'm going to choose this, or I'm trying to figure out this. No, that is not what a decision is. A decision, when you declare it, that declaration snips off any other options. It's like the fates coming in with the string of like all the different choices you could have been making. And when you make a decision, it cuts off that string. It cuts off a choice. And you are in this direction. And the universe takes that declaration and goes, okay, well, if you say, I don't want to live a life I have to recover from, and your words are spells, then the universe goes, well, I'm going to get rid of everything in your life that requires recovery. And yeah, well, let's just say the 6 months after coming back from Bali were pretty rough. From friendships going and burning away to my business burning down because there were so many things inside of that required recovery. And recovery stemmed from performance. It stemmed from, having a business model that was slightly aligned with my design, but also there was still parts where I was out of alignment. It was relationships where I didn't use my voice and my standards and my boundaries, even though I thought I did. I thought that I was very strong in my standards and boundaries, but I didn't realize how much that was just being slightly overtaken, or I was like, oh, there's a little bit of leaky energy there. So there were just things that, they leaked in and I didn't realize it. And this decision, the declaration of I don't want to live a life I have to recover from, and the devotion to that path really changed so much. And anything that I held on to tightly because I loved it, it wasn't, not because it was a bad thing, but because I had to let it go. I had friendships that I truly loved and gave so much of myself to. And in the weeks and months coming back from Bali, it was like versions of people came out that I was like, oh yeah, I'm not available for that. Oh, nope, okay. And it's not that I was being like, oh, you can't be in my life anymore. Oh, I made this decision and I'm going to cut you out. Like, it wasn't anything like that. It was more of like my energy shifted. I made a joke that, the series that I did when I was recording every single week in my old house with my roommate was like intentional as fuck because there's no going back. And I legitimately did not go back. If I look back on who I was a year and a half ago when I moved into the house, I'm like, holy shit, things have completely changed. But this last 6 months of I don't want to live a life I have to recover from, I had to get really honest. And anything that I held on to because I deeply loved that thing or that person or whatever it was, all it did was cause me more pain and turmoil. It wasn't something that even though I loved it, I could have kept, because that version of me no longer had the capacity to hold it. So make sure that whenever you do make declarations and decisions from those the decisions and the declarations, you know that you're in for a wild ride, because it's going to get rid of everything that is not available to you. And so I had to change my home. My lease was coming to an end, and I decided that this next home would be a sanctuary. And obviously you can see a little bit different of my style if you're watching this. The sanctuary, my home, the identity of the refined woman, not the woman that is becoming or trying or building. No wishy-washy energy allowed. And the work, the wellness, the relationships. And remember, those are the 5 areas of Wildly Satisfied. It's yourself, which is your identity. It's who you are. And then it's your environment, which is helping create the version of who you are. It's your wellness, which is how you nourish yourself. It's your work. It's the body of work that you're meant to do in the world. And it's your relationships. All of those things started to get in line with that declaration that I made, that decision to change my life that way. So I don't want to live a life I have to recover from. I had to get really honest about what parts of my business I was hiding behind. Old versions of me that hid behind the scenes because I was the long-term COO. I was the go-to intuitive strategist. I was the person that was the secret weapon behind all of these businesses that I never talked about. And I didn't like forwardly talk about all of the things that I have done and built in my life because I was so used to hiding and being behind the scenes. But those things created recovery. So in the last 6 months, I have been rewiring my nervous system to make it safer for me to show up, to be seen, to talk about things like this, to build different offers in my life where I'm speaking on stages or speaking on podcasts and talking about satisfaction. And I'm going to talk a lot about the satisfaction economy. And this is something that is drastically changing in the world. So you better get on board or you're going to be left behind. And there's going to be a whole series because I got some things to say to some bro dudes that are running businesses. I mean, if anybody who knows me well, it's like I talk about this stuff all the time. But when it comes to the satisfaction economy, when it comes to what's causing us to burn out and burn it down and have to rebuild again over and over again, that's what I call a collapse and recovery cycle. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm going to tell you why that happens. I'm going to tell you what that looks like in business, in life. You probably are already maybe resonating with it. You're like, oh my God, yeah, I do collapse and recovery cycles. Because every time I talk about this with somebody, they're like, holy shit, yeah, that's what it is. I started noticing this pattern, and I'm going to go deeper on that in the next episode. But this pattern, it's just so much of what we are taught as normal. Because if you're caught in the collapse and recovery cycle, well, guess what? They can sell you the problem, then they can sell you the solution versus being like, actually, I'm going to operate from overflow where I don't purchase from need. I don't purchase from worry or fear or survival. I purchase because I want to, I decide to. And it's crazy because I'm going to use an example from like Monsters, Inc., but it's one of those things like with the satisfaction economy and collapse and recovery. I'm going to talk about this later, like I said, but so much of what we have been sold of how to do marketing and business and things like that, pain-based marketing, it's all based in survival. It's all based in like, hey, here's this need, make sure to like twist the pain and show them what their pain is and then make it worse and then be like, here's the solution versus go and thinking like, oh, that's what makes money versus going, actually, when people are not in survival and they are in satisfaction and overflow, they're out of the recovery cycle, they have an abundance of money and then they want to spend a lot of money. And so it's kind of like the Monsters, Inc. example where they figure out that, hey, we're going to scare all these kids and that's what creates all of this energy. But actually laughing and being happy creates more energy. It's the same thing. And so I'm going to go so much deeper into this because it's like, whoo, but it's crazy because, you know, the collapse and recovery cycle and what it causes and how it shows up, it creates so much dysregulation in our bodies, in our nervous system, in feminine leaders. And I will say this over and over again, as someone who has worked with so many feminine leaders, the downfall of feminine leadership will be emotional dysregulation. I have seen it break businesses. I have seen it tear down relationships. I have seen the abdication of leadership ruin everything it touches. Because when we are dysregulated, when we don't soothe our nervous system, when we don't take responsibility for who we are, and we, we put responsibility on other people, and that's part of abdicating leadership. When we, say we're one thing and then we're actually something else behind the scenes and our team is suffering for it, or our relationships are suffering for it, or we're putting the responsibility on somebody else. When we are out of integrity with what we say and what we do, all of these things create so much dysregulation. And I, for one, am not building a life where I'm a different person behind the scenes and then I'm a different person in the front because, it looks good to optics. I'm not going to do that. I will not do that. So I absolutely, after seeing everything that I have seen, I can't do that. And that is a decision I made. And anywhere where I have been out of integrity because perhaps my actions didn't match my word. I said I wanted to do something and then I didn't do it. That's why I'm being very careful with my words now. All of that has shifted so much in the last 6 months. So the decision in Bali and the nourishment that I received from the food, the people, the places, the nature has dramatically shifted how I approach life. My body gets what she wants, and my business is better for it. My life is better for it. My peace of mind is better for it. And knowing what those standards are, knowing what your non-negotiables are, knowing what systems you have in place to hold yourself that honor who you are will stop the burnout and will stop the collapse and recovery cycle. Now, I'm going to dive so much more into the collapse and recovery cycle in the next episode, along with the addiction to chaos, because we are so addicted to chaos and we don't even realize it because of this collapse and recovery cycle. So I can't wait to dive into that with you guys.